okay, IA. So said the license plate on the black-on-black Mercedes-Benz owned by one Kevin Gaines, and the IA meant internal affairs. So his license plate, it's okay, internal affairs division, because he was a cop that had a black-on-black Mercedes amongst other things that we'll get into. And he wasn't just a LAPD cop, he was a member of the crash unit, the gang unit, and the infamous Rampart division. And one day in 1997, Kevin Gaines was driving a different car, a Montero, when he was gunned down at a red light by another cop, a white undercover cop who had been staking out a different case. And they simply got into a road rage exchange at the light. They both drew guns, but the white cop was quicker, and he killed Kevin Gaines. And of course, his name hit the paper. Johnny Cochran showed up. Remember, this is a few years, it's 97, it's a few years after the LA riot. The racial situation here is ripe for making money, so Johnny Cochran shows up, files a $25 million wrongful death lawsuit, and etc. LAPD, who had a new black chief, Willie Williams, and then an under chief, Bernard Perks, who then became the chief. They found that the white officer didn't do anything wrong, and Johnny Cochran himself eventually was willing to take a mere $80,000 just to close the case out, his share of a $250,000 settlement. So there was nothing there. Kevin Gaines was at that red light and just yelled at the other guy, pulled a gun, and the other guy was faster. And when you know some stuff about, and there's a conspiracy theory in some of these Biggie and Tupac things that Kevin Gaines was assassinated by the LAPD to cover up something, but the truck he was murdered in, or killed in, was owned by Suge Knight's wife, and the house he was living in was Suge Knight's wife's house. And just about maybe 2 years before him getting killed, a phone call came from that home and saying a man's been shot down by the pool, and a black male, and it described it and fit the description of Kevin Gaines as, you know, as the one who did it. And the police come and answer the door, and Kevin Gaines answers the door, and of course he looks like the person described in the call, and he gets combative with the LAPD, and he files, of course, but there's nobody at the pool, there was no shooting, it was a fake 911 call, and Kevin Gaines tried to file a big lawsuit against the city of LA for racial discrimination. But they found out that the person who placed the 911 call was Kevin Gaines. He called the police on himself, gave them a description of someone who looked like him, and then when they got there, tried to fight him so he could say, you know, there was discrimination and get some free money. So in big cities like Wayne County, Detroit, where I'm from, at one time had more lawyers per capita than any county in the country, because the Wayne County juries, which were pulling from the Detroit juries and Recorder's Court, which were pulling from the poorest major city in America, it was like the lottery. Like, that was the only way a lot of people ever got any money in Detroit and a lot of places. You can hear about all these big settlements that people get. Wonder where the money goes to their families. Anyways, Kevin Gaines didn't get any money, and he didn't even get fired from the LAPD, much less charged with the felony, the infamous Blue Wall. It's not always so much that the police care about each other to protect each other, but if they let all the cops who do all type of shady stuff get charged, and that was just constantly in the paper, the public's whatever, I mean, people that interact with the people a lot, like if you're in a certain kind of neighborhood, you know, I mean, they're not all bad, but a lot of shady stuff goes on, and they lie and do all kind of stuff. I guess regular people still think, well, there's a few bad apples. If they charged all the cops to do all kind of stuff with everything they could, from DUI to domestic violence up to more serious things like this, no one would have any faith in the police. And the only reason the streets in America functions is because you think the police might come and that you're supposed to respect the police. At least some people do. But you know, if like me, you know, you don't have much, well, you got to control yourself, and not many people control themselves. So anyways, so it came out that, like I said, Gaines was killed in Suge Knight's wife's car. He was living in Suge Knight's ex-wife's house, and he was one of those guys when you hear about LAPD moonlighting, working for Death Row. He was one of them. So Bernard Parks had been in charge of the investigation. He was in charge of handling the Rampart investigation that was about to start, which ended up being the biggest scandal in LAPD history. And in that, it came out that he covered all kind of stuff up, or tried to, like they always do. The Rampart scandal in a nutshell, and I'll talk about it in the next episode or so. Loosely is what training, well, I mean, training day would be events that some of the Rampart scandal events were, but it were Rampart's just east of downtown. So I think might have the highest population density in LA. It's like a Brooklyn or Manhattan neighborhood. It's so densely populated. A lot of gangs, and the police were, you know, robbing drug dealers, planting evidence, etc. And when stuff started coming out, they had to unravel, I don't know, like 100 people were taken out of California State Prison and put back on the street because they said they had fake cases put on them. So the Biggie murder case, much more so than the Tupac case, which we all know what happened, 99%, you know, it hasn't been solved at all. I mean, there's these different conspiracy theories, none of which are really, I guess that Poochie Faust is the most likely culprit, but he's dead, so it's always convenient to have a dead man be guilty, so who knows. It's always talked about like, oh, it was so shady that the LAPD and sheriffs were guarding Death Row, and they knew they were smoking weed and had guns and this and that. Well, let me tell you something. I live in downtown LA, where the most filming for Hollywood movies goes on of any place on planet Earth. Like, this is where they film at City Hall. Like downtown, there's skyscrapers that can look like modern New York. It can look like old Chicago. There's palm trees, there's slum, there's nice stuff. So they're always shooting around here. And the Los Angeles Police Department's probably #1 job, as it appears to me, is guarding Hollywood film sets. There's always swarms of them standing around. It's easy work. Park their motorcycles, stand in some groups, get some free food. The city gets paid. They don't do much work. Maybe they get to meet a movie star. Like, remember I was walking down Broadway, a big street here in downtown, afternoon, like a weekday afternoon, and the police were all like at the intersection, and at the red lights, what would go on? Idris Elba would run out in the middle of the street, and the camera would follow him, and they were filming scenes for The Tower, that Stephen King movie that he starred in. So there's always big movies going on around here. LAPD and the city gets big money off of what's the #1 industry in this wealthy region of the world, the entertainment industry. This really is the capital of it, and everything revolves around it. And they cover all type of stuff up. The only reason that probably they make it seem so, oh my God, with Death Row Records, well, finally it was some black celebrities and a black entertainment company that had some shady stuff going on with the police. Now that doesn't make it okay, it's just, it wasn't anything new, I'm sure. And in a city with the industry of Hollywood full of weirdos and drug addicts and all kind of people, boy, there sure really isn't ever any major scandals. I mean, maybe someone gets caught picking up a tranny prostitute or buying drugs, but that's embarrassing. But, you know, you think no OD'd little children that someone was doing something with, or murdered prostitutes, or this, that, and the third, or some Hollywood actor with bricks and bricks, you think that stuff has never gone on? Sure it has. Somebody must be covering it up, I guess, because it just doesn't make sense by the law of averages. And it took for there to be some shade tree black business people and cops doing that for it to, you know, oh, we're gonna blow the lid off LAPD corruption. Well, LA's a city with a controlled narrative. For a long time, the LA Times, there's like 3 families, the Hearst a couple other, and between the LA Tribune or Times or whatever, and City Hall and the police, they were just kind of playing what, you know, the media was going to say and what everything was going to be. Those plans didn't always work. So Kevin Gaines worked at Rampart with Rafael Perez and David Mack, two other guys linked to death row and part of the conspiracy theories of who killed Biggie. And David Mack ended up, I think he just got out of prison, or he got out a while ago. He did go to prison for bank robbery. He was doing bank robberies while he was a cop. There's all those pictures of him with death row where he's got on all red and he's throwing up the Mob Piru with real members of Mob Piru, and you can't wear all red and throw up the Mob Piru standing next to him unless you're not one of them. So he was a Mob Piru while he was a cop, and he was robbing banks, and he went to prison for it. But there were a lot of people that security over the years at all the many different events that death row must have gone to. There were white cops, there was all kind of people, and most of it was just regular stuff. And when you read all these conspiracy books and they want to pick, oh well, this means this and that means that, you really don't know. But Kevin Gaines himself was a wild card trying to get something for nothing, some free money out, and he was crazy enough to try to scam the city, and he got himself killed at a red light by Detective Frank Lyga. Part 1, City of Lies, American Dope.